For the last 15 years, Adam Montiel has been bringing you the stories, the people, and the producers that make wine better and more fun. Whether you're a connoisseur or a cork. Here, we taste it, we spill it, we leave it all on the table. It's The Pour with Adam Montiel.
Welcome back to where we taste it, we spill it, we leave it all on the table. Today we're honored to be joined by a true icon in the winemaking world, Randall Grahm. Yeah, I've been waiting for this one for a while. Known for his innovative and often unconventional approach to winemaking, Randall is the visionary behind Bonny Doon Vineyard, and now his latest venture, The Language of Yes. And I'm still shocked to, after all these years with Cork Dorks and 14-something years, never really chatted with him. He is a legit celebrity winemaker, created some very famous brands, Big House Red, Cardinal Zin, La Cigare Volante, Bonny Doon, we said, Pope Lachum, and now he is speaking the language of yes. But as Matt Ketman appropriately puts it, there are few winemakers more important to the Central Coast wine industry than Randall Grahm. His journey in the wine industry, nothing short of legendary. Started his career with the ambitious goal of producing the Great American Pinot Noir, but found his true calling with Rhône varieties. His groundbreaking work with these grapes earned him the moniker the Rhône Ranger, a title that stuck with him ever since this 1989 Wine Spectator cover. Over the years, Randall has been recognized with numerous awards, including the Wine and Spirits Professional of the Year by the James Beard Foundation and induction into the Vintner's Hall of Fame. Born in Los Angeles and educated at UC Santa Cruz, his early career saw him working at a Beverly Hills wine shop where he developed an insatiable passion for French wines. This passion led him to establish Bonny Doon Vineyard in 1983, where he became a pioneer in the American wine industry, particularly with Rhône varieties. Randall's influence on the wine world extends far beyond his innovative techniques and distinctive wines. He was one of the first to advocate for the screw caps on premium wines and transparent ingredient labeling. His adventurous spirit continues with The Language of Yes, a collaboration with Gallo that focuses on small batch, vineyard-driven wines. Today we're recording this episode in the beautiful Edna Valley from the tasting room of The Language of Yes, the new home for Randall's latest brand, Language of Yes. So I'm excited to talk to Randall about his storied career, his path, his philosophy on winemaking, and the exciting developments now with The Language of Yes. And if for some reason you ever offer Randall Grahm a mushroom gummy before you interview him, he has the most charming way of politely declining. I thought it would be fun. His daughter showed up. I didn't know that she was a lovely young woman. But something tells me, Randall, he might. I don't know. Misread that? Let's jump into the conversation. I think we're talking about screw caps. You were an early advocate of screw caps on premium wines.
Correct.
And I'm curious what motivated this, and how has the industry's perception, in your opinion, of screw caps changed since then? I think we're wrapping our heads around it more. I love it. I think there's a lot of convenience. Maybe some feel it loses some of the romanticism, but you were early on this. You were early money on this.
That is correct. Plumpjack was the only one to precede me as premium wine. They made 150 cases at the time. The following year, I made something like 35,000, 40,000 cases in screw cap. So I was really the first one to do it in any big way on premium wines. And for me, it was kind of, I backed into it. Corks were dreadful in those days. They were really an abomination. Weren't getting much better. For a couple of years, I played around with synthetic closures, which I ultimately did not like at all. They were bad as corks, but in a different way. So I was really had backed myself into a corner. I couldn't go back to corks. I didn't like the synthetic closures. And screw caps were known to be a good technical closure. The only issue was people imagined that the consumers would not accept them because there were some negative associations. Imagine railroad tracks and parole violation and, paper bags and, not exactly the most positive associations. But technically they were known to be a good closure. So the question was how to win the hearts and minds of the consumer. And I just thought, well, we'll just do it. We'll just make it happen. And so we were kind of on a mission, and we took this extraordinary initiative. I should also mention, at the time, wine writers, somms were universally appalled by performance of cork. So I knew we had a community in our court to pursue this. It was just a matter of somebody just had to do it. So we did. We staged this extraordinary event, the death of the cork, a wake for Monsieur Thierry Bouchon.
That's clever.
And we did this at Grand Central Station in New York City.
No, you didn't.
We got a hearse and a coffin and a corpse made out of corks, and we took the coffin and we paraded around Grand Central Station.
This is brilliant.
And I persuaded Jancis Robinson to come to deliver the eulogy for Monsieur Bouchon, which she did.
Oh my gosh.
She flew from London to New York. And then we
for
had
this stunt.
A wake.
This is like a radio bit.
It was a stunt.
Brilliant.
And it worked. It utterly worked. We got, they still study this in business school. This was like an incredible marketing initiative. And it kind of worked. But the reality was it was ready to work, whether I did it or not. It turns out there wasn't much resistance to the notion of screw caps. People preferred corks, but if they liked the wine and it came in a screw cap, so big deal. They were going to buy it anyways most of the time. So it turned out to be not as...
kind of a non-issue.
Non-issue, correct.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is it's maybe not as ceremonial at tableside, but who cares?
Who cares?
I'm with you. Yeah,
who cares?
And I've even seen some psalms where, have like some fun way where they'll roll the screen, but just trying to, they're almost kind of making light of it. But no, I mean, you're right. And I think once we started seeing I think one of the first wines I saw, premium wines, it got like best wine in the world one year, maybe 10 or so years ago. It was an Australian Chardonnay, 200 something bucks a bottle in a screw cap, under a screw cap. It's great, awesome. So I think that's pretty cool that you were kind of early money on that. The language of yes. I'm curious how the partnership with Gallo came about. What are your goals with the language of yes? And what are we kind of putting together right now?
I had sold Bonny Doon, and not long thereafter, Joe Gallo approached me about potentially collaborating on an effort from the Central Coast, working with Rhône varieties. And Gallo, I think, wanted to do more on the Central Coast and more with Rhône varieties. Specifically pink wine. I think they were a little late in discovering pink wine. So I, of course, was happy for the opportunity. I'm always kind of intellectually curious about things that I don't know, and never having worked in a large corporate context, kind of new and exciting for me.
Did it scare you a bit?
Heck yes.
Yeah.
But it's been a great opportunity. And what's most interesting, of course, is the opportunity to work with some fabulous vineyards in this neighborhood, specifically the Rancho Real vineyard. And access to such great research opportunity. Gallo has the research department that is extraordinary. Anyhow, we were doing some really cool things with new varieties and looking at different clones and biotypes of existing varieties, looking at some different grape growing techniques, winemaking techniques. It's been fun.
Talk about the new varieties for a second, because I'm curious about the new varietals. The language of yes wines that are using, why you chose them. What are they?
Well, the most interesting one is a funny grape type Porus of the Le Cerisier, the Tiburin Sanso, the pale pink.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Yeah, this is a really interesting grape. This is a grape called Tiburin, which I'm really excited about. It goes by another name. In Italy, they call it Rossese, but in Provence, it's Tiburin. And there aren't many producers, probably fewer than a half a dozen producers. Not a lot of acres, maybe 100 acres, if that, in France. But it's an old variety, and I believe it is potentially the most interesting grape on the planet, or among the most interesting grapes for pink wine. It produces a pink wine that will age 25, 30 years. It's got a lot of kind of elegance to it as a pink or as a red.
Pick it early, right? Do the whole thing like you're going to do with like an intentional rosé. You pick it early, do your thing, direct to press, right?
Well, actually, I like to crush it into the press. Unlike Sanso, it is actually crushable and benefits from a little bit of skin contact. Unlike Sanso, which is very problematic.
Yeah.
But this is the Tiburin grown in Paso. This is the 22 or 23, which imparts a kind of a different texture to it and kind of length and persistence on the palate. I like this sort of haunted duo type, just kind of this slight echoing reverberation, textural depth to the wine, dimensionality, if you will.
I like that. So different than, say, like a Grenache rosé, or maybe even like a Domaine Tempier style Mourvedre rosé. Mm-hmm. The Tiburin? Tiburin.
Yes.
I want to make sure I say that right. So interesting. And Cinsault is another fun one you're starting to see more and more.
Love Cinsault.
What a fun grape, right?
Yep, indeed. No, Cinsault is the secret weapon for the future.
Really?
It's a very thrifty grape. It's a very productive grape.
Uh-huh.
In fact, perhaps too productive. So to make a good Cinsault, you really need to control the crop levels. Otherwise, it just goes mental. It keeps acidity. It does well in a warmer climate. It does well in a dry climate, and produces very elegant wines. Can produce very elegant wines. The key is just keeping the yield down to get it to ripen properly.
I know Andrew Nelson of War Room,
Mm-hmm.
and he just always has so much great, cool things to say about you.
Oh,
Are those, thinking about those times, it's so interesting because, you think of like a musician who has like a number one hit record, and then maybe they're bringing out a new album, and it's like the concentration. Okay, how do we make that hit song again? How do we make that hit record again? Do you feel those pressures when you're coming into brand new brand, like we're hitting reset, we're doing something new, something different, but my name's on it? Is there like just inherent a feeling on your shoulders, like gotta swing for the fences? I don't know.
I'm not a great fan of heights, as far as like, real heights.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as winemaking heights, I just don't look down. I just keep walking across the tightrope.
Yeah.
And just keep walking. And maybe this is foolishness on my part, but it sort of works. I just, some things I have a strong belief, and I just move forward. I don't look down.
I like that. Just kind of like that onward.
Onward. Yes.
Onward. So you've seen the California wine industry evolve so much, many different ways since you started. What do you think the future holds of late?
Oh my gosh. Well, the wine industry in general, not just in California, but worldwide, is in a very perilous place right now.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a perfect storm of a lot of factors. I think the popularity and accessibility of cannabis has kind of not helped the wine industry. It's kind of a demographic perfect storm as well. Wealthy wine collectors are getting old and dying or infirm and not replenishing their cellars. Younger people don't have the disposable income to buy nice wines. And the culture is just moving faster and faster. And the thing about the lesson of wine is really to slow down and sniff the flowers or the floral bouquet or the whatever it is that you're sniffing.
It's so interesting because like you look at like a lot of folks, like even like Amelie's demographic, like these are folks who, we weren't tasting weird things at their age, kombucha and all these like probiotics in their sodas. I mean, so there is this idea, and you feel this demographic is more than ever interested in the story behind what they buy. And so I would imagine, I would hope to see that at least those two things that we observe would translate into them being interested in wine. But you're seeing sales kind of decline a little bit.
Well, sales are declining. The other thing about wine is, there's a big world out there, and young wine drinkers, rightly or wrongly, and I would probably say rightly, are not particularly brand loyal. They're fickle, and they like something, they'll try it, but they don't really have a need to kind of go back and try it again. They want to move on to the next thing. And that's great, but it's hard to build a business in having to get new customers every week. You have to find new customers. So it's tricky. You need to have venues. So it's very difficult for small producers to find distribution. I mean, there's been a consolidation of distribution channels in this country, which is very vexing. Finding your way onto supermarket shelves is sort of reserved for large corporate entities. It's hard for smaller wineries to do that. It's just a much more competitive world that we live in right now.
How did you always kind of attack that pie in your journey and go, okay, this much DTC, this much want to get it into distribution? Was there like a formula or kind of a ideology that you followed?
Not really. You mentioned Andrew. I was a little bit like Andrew back in the day. I just keep at it, just pester people until they gave up. I think I inherited this trait from my mother, who's like a bull in a china shop. She would never give up on anything. But you just kept pushing on doors and eventually they open. I think back in the day when I had a tasting room up in Bonny Doon, up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, it was a very special place. And being able to, and I was lucky to have wonderful people working in this tasting room. Back in the day, tasting rooms were a bigger deal. Tasting rooms were an opportunity to try things that you couldn't find elsewhere. And I felt that was really one of the keys to our success, was having this very personal touch with customers. And I still feel that is the best way to imprint people on a brand is to
That direct-to-consumer model.
Direct-to-consumer model is
Yeah.
I think you absolutely need that to have anything like a brand loyalty develop.
Yeah. What do you tell folks who are young in the game? It's young winemakers. A lot of folks, getting their hands on property is out of the question. It's almost like, how do we secure good contracts, good fruit, maybe make a name for ourselves? And not far from here, there's a place called Duncan Alley in the Lowbro neighborhood of Slough, where you got a whole bunch of people making wine, El Lugar or more. They're doing it in a warehouse, but they're sourcing, badass fruit.
Yeah. Good luck to them. I'd be scared shitless to do anything like that right now.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I've got a bit of a reputation, that I've got access to a wonderful vineyard, but just buying fruit off the rack, as it were, off the shelf, and just going head to head with everyone else would be very daunting. Is very daunting at this point.
Yeah. The language of yes. What are some of the goals? I mean, as far as getting people, obviously this, we took over the Edna Valley Vineyard facility where you're like, this is crazy. This is beautiful. This is just amazing. Views that are just almost like you painted them on that wall. It's incredible what with folks who come and taste here, what they're able to look at. You got seats 360 degrees around here, views 360 degrees around here. What are some of the hopes, dreams for the language of yes, scalability, how we want to attack this?
Make more wine would be nice. Make significantly more Tiburon and Sanso. Add some whites. Expand the product line significantly, or somewhat, I should say. But grow it organically in such a way that make no compromises on quality. Absolutely, I will refuse to compromise quality for the sake of growth. We're doing some interesting things with planting some new vines and looking at different clonal trials with Syrah and Grenache, and very excited about potentially upgrading the quality of those wines as well. So I think it's controlled growth, conscious growth, and just taking it low.
Do you have a personal favorite wine or a vintage that you produce that still just sings to you and you remember fondly?
85 Cigar Volant, which was the second vintage of Cigar Volant, is one of my favorite wines of all time. Back in the day, we made some nice Grenache from the Gilroy Hecker Pass area, and just the stars aligned with the 85. That was exquisite wine. And then some of the cigars, 80 from 2015, 15, 16, the early teens, I think were really good. I was on a kind of a goofy quest to make wines with this hyper-reductive élevage, caution wine geeks being spoken right now. This, by aging the wines in glass demijohns, I think that was a really powerful technique, achieving some really interesting textural complexity with that technique and savoriness. Those wines were really special. I don't think they were ever really acknowledged as, few people really
got it.
Really got it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but.
How is Cigar, obviously very special? What made it special to you, and how did it evolve over the years?
Well, the trade-off with Cigar, it was the French make the distinction between what they call wines of place and wines of effort, vin de terroir and vin d'effort. For me, the wine's greatest expression are wines of place. But Cigar Volant was never a wine of place. It was always a wine of effort, and a composed wine where the winemaker had a very strong hand in determining the style. So that was the brilliance of Cigar, but also the tragic shortcoming of Cigar. In other words, by having all this control and being able to manipulate the winemaking in such a way, we were able to achieve some extraordinary qualities in the wine, but it didn't have the originality of place, alas. Again, it was a trade-off. So the quality was consistent, the wines were delicious, but it didn't have a certain sort of originality, if you will.
How do you see kind of the role of technology evolving in the winemaking process? I'm fascinated by so many different pieces being, infused with AI here or there. Are there technological advancements that particularly excite you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think I'm too old to take full advantage. The problem with technological advancement, or some technological advancements, or with AI, is like many things, it's a trade-off. You gain something and you lose something at the same time. And I think what you might lose is this sort of soulfulness or originality. And it's kind of the same, a similar critique to music played on, not played on vinyl. I mean, I'm an analog guy, not a digital guy. So there's something about a wine that has some flaws, that is not perfect, that's not over-conceived, that I think speaks to me in a different way. I'm not sure that my wine's to be perfect. I think in so doing, I would potentially lose something along the way.
Some of the favorite food and wine pairings that you have always loved, still always go back to, maybe even some new ones that you've kind of discovered with the language of yes wines.
Well, can't go wrong. The rosé, the Tiburon rosé with sushi, totally brilliant. I like risotto, Grenache and risotto. Certain risottos can be nice. I like fennel and uni risotto with Roussanne. I'm looking forward to making a Roussanne.
Do you make risotto at home?
Yes.
Wow, cool.
I love risotto.
Yeah.
But I like the sort of anise flavor that you find sometimes in Grenache Blanc and Roussanne. So that's a really nice affinity with fennel and uni, rather like that.
I remember I was in San Francisco. We were recording a show, I think, up at Zap, or their Zinfandel experience. And we were walking by this restaurant, and it said, beef risotto. And I thought, this sounds really good, like some kind of nice beef and a risotto. Mm-hmm. Who knows, right? I'm like, and it said, a lot of these places have the menu right on the wall, on the window. Go in there. I'll look the beef risotto. That sounds fantastic. It comes back this completely red bowl of risotto. I didn't see that it said beet risotto.
Beet, yes. Beet.
And it was actually really good, but not the kind of just like, what a surprise, Well,
I haven't made it in a while, but I make a strawberry risotto.
Really?
Which I tasted it in a little village near Asti, Castiglione Monferrato. There's a restaurant there called the Ruque restaurant, and they work with a grape there called Ruque, which I adore. And Ruque is, imagine the love child of Nebbiolo and Bracchetto. It's kind of smells like rose petals. It's very floral. It's fantastic. And they pair it with strawberry risotto.
Wow.
And it took several years of effort to try to replicate that. But I'm now growing Ruque in San Juan Bautista.
No way.
And it's almost time for strawberry risotto again.
Heck yeah.
Yes.
Invite me over. I'm coming. It's interesting. You remind me of Ken Volk in a lot of ways, that you are just so fascinated by a lot of lesser known and lesser appreciated varieties.
Yes. I haven't seen Ken in a while, but I like Ken very much.
Yeah, he's smart. like you, just a really smart dude. I interviewed him maybe a year and a half ago at his house in Slow. And just ampliography books, 2.5 feet high in a couple different stacks. Guys, he's just awesome at what he does and what he knows. White Syrah.
Yes.
I've heard you've discovered a white grape variety of Syrah. Please tell me more.
Not exactly a white. It's similar. You could kind of call it a white variant of Syrah. One of the things that's been really interesting to me is the idea of creating more complexity in wines. It's kind of, I'm looking at it from a couple of different angles, but in other words, I'm looking at what can we do in California that is totally original, that can't be done in Europe, that has not been done or can't be done. And one of the amazing things we have in this country is the latitude and the freedom to grow grapes where we want, how we want, and so forth. And I was sort of initially playing around with the idea of doing self-crosses and with the idea of finding a unique outlying biotype that would be potentially better suited to our climate and our growing conditions than the parent. So in other words, Syrah, for example, was originally planted in northern Rhône and was adapted to those conditions. But when you transpose it to central coast of California, it's hard to imagine that you're going to have the same degree of congruity in California as you have in the Rhône. So my original thought was maybe by creating all this variation, I might find an individual unique biotype that would be better suited than the parent. Turns out, a lot of people told me what an extremely bad idea this was, because you have a lot of funky recessive offspring that are produced, that are either sterile or have defects or big problems. Some of them are quite interesting and unique. But what I came to was this idea that maybe by creating a set of individuals all slightly different from one another, This maybe none of them better or more interesting than the parent. However, somehow in virtue of the sheer diversity of genetic material, maybe that would be a strategy for creating unique complexity. And so I tried this with Syrah. Syrah has a white parent and a red parent, and the white parent is carried on a recessive gene. When you make self-crosses, 25% of the offspring are white grapes and 75% are red grapes. And the red grapes are interesting, but the white grapes are killer, amazingly, even more interesting. They're more consistent in their cluster conformation. They're more productive. They don't seem to have as many biological flaws as the red variants. So what I did was actually selected 65, I planted about 850, 900 different biotypes, different self-crosses, seedlings, grew them out, picked 60 of what I thought were the most interesting white variants, took budwood from that, had that grafted onto rootstock, and then planted a block of about 1.5 acres of mixed white Syrah variants. So we're going to have maybe a little bit of fruit this year. Next year we'll have maybe enough to harvest a commercial crop. What could possibly go wrong?
This could be huge. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, it's just like, you must be so excited to try it.
I can't wait. I'm very excited. And then we're doing the same thing with red. We're replicating this with red. But the interesting experiment there is we're planting a side-by-side with the red variants. We're planting a block of 100% Syrah. Actually, this is a longer conversation, kind of a digression, but a variant of Syrah called Serene. And we're planting the Serene side-by-side with the block of mixed red Syrah Serene variant.
Is this that weapons grade Syrah?
This is weapons grade Syrah. Serene is weapons grade Syrah, correct.
That is so cool. I love that name too. Did you come up with that?
Yes.
That's a great weapons grade Syrah. Is that what it's going to be called?
I hadn't thought about a name yet. I've got a couple of years to figure it out.
That's pretty good. Are there some favorite wine regions besides California? Any wine regions around the world that you find particularly inspiring or that you enjoy exploring beyond the obvious ones?
Well, Navarra in Spain is a really interesting area. I've had a chance to work there years ago with Garnacha. Northern Rhône, of course, Côte-Rôtie and Hermitage is brilliant. Gascony, I love Gascony. Piemonte is paradise. That's not a big surprise.
You ever done Sardinia?
I've loved Sardinian wines, but I've never been to Sardinia, and I think it's on the list.
I know. That's kind of on our list, too. I think that'd be a really fun place to try. I want to hear I was told to ask you the flying cigar story.
The flying... Andrew probably asked you to... somehow I think Andrew is behind this.
Pleading the fifth on that one.
Okay. I decided to try to attempt kind of an homage to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. This is when the Pinot Noir wasn't working out, so I thought, I'll try to make a Southern Rhône style wine, and I'll call it Old Telegram, because as an homage to Vieux Telegraphe. And I was reading the Livingston Lermouth book on the wines of the Rhône, and I came across the chapter on Châteauneuf-du-Pape and this passage that indicated that in 1954, there was a village in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Actually, the mayor of the village was quite concerned that UFOs were going to land in the vineyards of Châteauneuf, so they adopted a ordinance prohibiting the landing of UFOs in the vineyard. And
right.
I thought, these people are completely nuts, but this is a great idea for a wine label. And I just immediately visualized kind of an old-fashioned looking wine label with a kind of odd occurrence happening kind of discreetly in the background. You had to look twice to see this thing lurking in the trees, behind the trees. And that was, of course, the genesis of Cigar Volant.
So good. I love that. Future grapes, I'm curious. What grapes do you think are going to be suited best for growing in California, say 50 years?
I think Aglianico will be really important. Sagrantino will be important. Nero d'Avola. I think Nebbiolo will potentially be more interesting in California. I think Nebbiolo's got a great potential. Maybe Nerello Mascalese could be interesting. I'd look at Southern Italian grapes, Greek varieties from Georgia, Eastern Bloc could be quite interesting. Of course, from France, I think Cinsault and Tiburon, super useful in particular. I hope we can still make Pinot Noir somewhere. That would be tragic loss to lose Pinot. Maybe Syrah will be grown in Scotland. Who knows?
I'm so curious to talk to you about orange wine. I think this is another thing you were kind of early money on. You see it very popular now, and I feel it's more and more getting more popular. To someone who doesn't know, explain orange wine in Randall Grahm terms, and how do you make it delicious?
Well, you delegate it to somebody who knows what they're doing, not myself. I'm not a big orange wine. I don't have a lot of experience with orange wine. You start with white grapes that are not overly phenolic. You macerate them very gently. You want to make sure that they have proper acidity because you don't want it to get too pHy. And you just keep an eye on it and you're super gentle with your extraction. And
so you didn't do a lot of orange wine?
No, we did a little bit in the day, but until recently, it was actually Andrew's provocation occasion the orange wine. It was not my initiative at all. It was actually Andrew.
Oh, okay. So even in your paths prior,
I did a couple of orange wines that were not particularly brilliant back in the day. Luckily, they never saw the light of day, so mercifully.
Yeah. You're a big fan of Vermentino.
I am a big fan of Vermentino.
Why do you like that grape?
I think it's suited to our Mediterranean climate. It has wonderful natural acidity. It is delicious at a low alcohol, so I don't like ponderously high alcohol wines particularly. It's drought tolerant, heat tolerant, savory. I love the sort of balsamic quality of Vermentino. Grows great with seafood, little fishies. I think it's a fabulous grape.
Yeah. You have a favorite one?
Sardinia. Well, I like the variant that they call Pigato. I think Pigato in Liguria is my favorite biotype. This is really based on a statistically non-significant sampling. I think Pigato from Liguria is kind of my current favorite expression of Vermentino.
If you could eliminate one vineyard pest, what would it be and why?
Well, Parker's already retired. Sorry. Strike that. Don't.
That's too funny.
Oh, dear. No, I didn't say that. I really didn't say that.
That's the best moment of the podcast. Are you kidding me?
Oh, my gosh.
That's the best part of the show. That's a Randall Grahm we were waiting for. We did that without the mushroom gummy.
Oh, dear. What vineyard pest in my case, gophers. I would love to see gophers disappear. In a humane fashion, of course, but they got to go. They make my life miserable.
What's the benefit of growing grapevines from seed?
Just the ability to mix up the genetic deck and reshuffle the genetic deck and get variation. And I think it's kind of, imagine Sélection Massal on steroids, if you will. Sélection Massal in a normal vineyard, you get very small, slight mutations and differences. But with growing grapes from seed or self-crossing, you get wild much broader, more dramatic variability. Much of it not favorable, but potentially some percentage of them more interesting than the parent, or as interesting as the parent.
When you talk about your legacy, when you think of your path and your legacy, what do you consider your greatest achievement in your winemaking career?
I don't even think about that at all. That makes me nervous to think about that. I think the achievement is yet to come. And I don't know what it's going to be. If I were to die anytime soon, they would say, what a great marketer he was. And he's really made the world safe for screw caps. And I think, well, that's nice, but that's not sufficient.
What would you like your legacy to be when all is said and done in this beautiful path that you've created for yourself?
Well, I think if I could somehow encourage people to take more chances and be more open-minded about just different ways of doing things. I think this idea of mixed planting could be a really powerful idea, not for everybody, but it could pave the way to just a new style of wine that has not existed up until now. Just a totally different expression of wine. Just of complexity and nuance that could not be achieved any other way. Or it could end up all tasting like Pinotage, and that would break my heart, but that's sort of how it goes.
But you tried.
But I tried,
yeah.
Exactly.
were there certain superstitions in the cellar with you? Was there certain music being played? Was there little, ceremonial things you would do to a stuck ferment to get it to come around?
Add sulfur.
Yeah.
That's the only way to make stuck fermentations come around is to add sulfur. Nah, don't do that.
Yeah. Were there things, were you ever superstitious or in ways that you would kind of, go about your process?
I'm sure there were. I mean, I'm not a religious person at all, but I would sometimes pray about stuck fermentations. I would try to commune with the barrel or the tank and just lay on of hands and offer the strongest encouragement, to kind of get back with the program.
Would you talk out loud to the barrels?
Heck yes.
Yeah.
Whatever it took.
The grapes?
Whatever it took.
And the vineyard too?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love those stories of just getting like really real, and hearing everyone's, different pieces of some of that process that, is unique to each and everyone in it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Obscure grapes. There's
Yes.
some obscure grapes that have potential to be the next big thing. If you were to think, what do you think would be the next big thing out of these obscure ones?
No, Tiburon could
be it.
Could be it. It seems to behave more predictably in California than it does in France. I visited Clos-Cibon a couple of years ago and was slightly horrified to see how weird the vines were expressing. They were highly variable in their maturity. Some grapes were 17 bricks, 19 bricks, 21 bricks, 23 bricks. On a given vine, they were just all over the board. On a given cluster, they were all over the board, and that was kind of a little scary. But they seem to behave a lot more consistently in California. Again, as I said, Adianico, I think, has got great potential in California. What other oddball? There's a wonderful grape, extremely obscure, Rossese Bianco from Liguria. Nothing to do with Rossese Nero, but of course, just because it has the same name, that's Italy. That's a fabulous grape. I think it's got potential. Oh my gosh.
You're always learning about wine, right? It's so funny. I'll interview people who are like you, even by far, strides and strides smarter than I am on wine. But it feels like everyone, no matter how smart they are in wine, they're always learning.
Mm-hmm.
There's never enough to learn. Can you think of something like you learned in the last couple months, or something about wine where you're like, oh shit, no way. That's something that Randall Grahm just learned.
Yes. What the heck did I learn just the other day? It was on Twitter. Never mind. There was an obscure variant of Verdicchio that was, I learned this not that long ago. Nebbiolo Rosse is in fact not Nebbiolo at all. It's actually a distinctive, unique grape variety. And that's a variety that could be quite interesting for California.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's an unknown parent, but Nebbiolo is most likely one of its parents, but its other parent is not yet been identified.
How often are you mixing it up on social networks? Are you into it or not?
Not as much as, Twitter ain't what it used to be, alas. I had a lot of fun on Twitter in the day. It's not as much fun as it used to be, time as I used to have, seemingly. And at the end of the day, I don't think I really even understand social particularly. I'm not a great one for the short form. I think the long form worked better for me in the past. And there's something a little unseemly about, just notice me.
I know.
It's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah. It's weird because like necessary evils. And I know you have a team here who can, do a lot of these things for you with the language of yes, of course. But, as you're promoting like the show or this or what you're doing as like a broadcaster, like these things are just so necessary. And yeah, there is something about it that's like, and then it's like, you have to almost just like turn it off for a minute because you get like, how did that post do? As soon as I start to think about like that, I'm just like, no, it's just, that grosses me out.
Yeah.
But it's inherent in it of some sort. There's just some inherent evil that it just does that to you and you get caught up in it. And I don't know.
Yep. It's hard to make a buck these days. It's
Were you big with the trades? Like as far as, reading all the, the advocates, the scores of this, that you put wines to medals, you were just like, yeah, no, kill me now.
Kill me now,
yeah.
Please. Yes.
Yeah. Do you think the 100-point score hurt the wine biz?
Yes, completely. obviously led to, standardization, homogeneity, did not promote variability of style, variations in style.
People are making wines for the scores, making wines for the scorers.
Correct. And getting scary good at it, which is sort of amazing. Reverse engineering Parker's palette, reverse engineering the Wine Spectator palette. That's pretty scary stuff.
Where do you think we are now, where a lot of these, maybe the bigger people have, like you said, Robert Parker retired, right? But you have these people who go independent with it, and they have their own subscription-based kind of things where people are glomming on and trying to get that score, same kind of thing?
I think so. I mean, there are some good publications out there. I mean, the Berghound is for serious Burgundy lovers, and that's very grown up. Josh Reynolds, may he rest in peace, was a great Rhône guy, and I think he did a lot.
A lot of people have respect for him.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that we as wine drinkers are eclectic. We don't like one thing, and that's problematic because if you've got a brand, it's a lot easier to sell your brand if you're stylistically consistent. So Parker, his genius was he was incredibly consistent. If you like this wine that I gave a 97 to, you're going to absolutely positively love this other wine that I gave a 97 to because they're stylistically of a kind.
But most winemakers are more unique to that.
Well, I mean, the reality is we like wines that are big. We like wines that are delicate. We like wines that are sometimes higher in alcohol, lower in alcohol, tannic, not tannic. The question is, are they well-made wines? Are they good expressions or unique expressions of their terroir? Even though they're not necessarily the same, they're well-made.
I don't know good press can help a winery, but I imagine, I think of some bands back in the 80s, like Ambrosia or REO Speedwagon. These were bands that had ballads and what they would call yacht rock hits, kind of soft rock, ballad kind of songs that really hit big. But when you would go see these bands in concert, they were decidedly more lively, more rocky. And then people would be like, wait a minute, I thought I was hearing Biggest Part of Me and, all these big songs that were just kind of soft, feely love songs, but the majority of their songs were a lot harder, more rock-driven songs. So people would go to these concerts going, what did I get into? Well, that band was a lot bigger than just those two songs.
Sure.
A lot of these winemakers in the same way, that might have scored 96 or whatever it is. That might have scored 96 or whatever it is, but that's really not the whole case study on the whole winemaker, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. If there was a last bottle, what would you choose to be your last bottle of wine?
Musigny de Vogüé out of Magnum, probably from the 40s or 50s, would be the way to go. I'd stretch it out as long as I could. I'd get a large format bottle.
There you go. I like that. You ever killed a Magnum before?
No, not single-handedly.
Not single-handedly.
No, alas.
Yeah. I killed a bottle before.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
In the day.
We are pros. Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We are gentlemen too, right? I can't tell you how much this meant to me, Randall. I hope you had half as much fun as I did.
I did.
To you.
It was fun. Thanks so much, Adam.
Yeah, thanks so much. The Language of Yes, some really cool wines. Before we end here, give me a couple little, just some SKUs with the Language of Yes that you're really excited for folks to come down here to the tasting room and get their hands on.
I don't know how many bottles are left. Can't be very many, but there's a Senso that we did that was air dried for 30 days and 30 nights here in the very cellar of Edna Valley Vineyard. That is really special.
I want to try that. Yeah,
it's lurking around, and I think this is it.
Oh, is that it right there?
This is it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'm gonna try that one right now. So this is the one.
That's the one, and I think the Syrah, the 21 or 22 Syrah from Rancho Real Vineyard is extraordinary in its elegance and tastes like proper Syrah.
Where are we pricing these bad boys at?
The Syrah and the Grenache are $45. Which is very good, fair price. Oh, also the rosés. Both rosés are wonderful.
Those are great.
They're delicious, and I don't remember how much they cost. But
well, you got to make an appointment to taste here, I imagine. I think you can take walkability if it's available. Just reading the sandwich board sign as I walked in. But I hope people come down here and taste the wines. What a great story. I would love to chat with you again sometime.
Any old time.
I know that you're doing Cal Poly. You come down here, a few times a year, maybe once a quarter or so. So I'd love to check in with you again and maybe do it without all the microphones, but just to hang out. I'd really love that.
Great. Sounds great.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Thanks for spilling it, man. I really appreciate doing this. This was fun.
My pleasure.
Well, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our guest, Randall Grahm. Man, your passion for winemaking and your innovative spirit truly inspiring. Enjoyed the conversation. It's been an honor to explore your journey from Bonny Doon, everything in between, to now the Language of Yes. We got links in the show notes. Be sure to visit the Language of Yes, learn more about these extraordinary wines, and when he's going to be. He comes in town often. He's up there doing his thing in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but he is down here often, and I know folks love to taste when he is around Edna Valley and in the mix. He's also doing a lot with Cal Poly and more. So much thanks to all the folks at Gallo, Language of Yes, and of course, Randall Grahm. And I'm still wanting a rain check. We're still going to do those mushroom gummies sometime, all right? Get to adammontiel.com. You can learn more. You can also hit the Connect tab. Maybe let me know who you think should be on another episode of The Pour. I do love these long-form conversations. Had great feedback on the John Couch interview. If you didn't check that one out, just another guy with so much rich history. Like today, but just different. So good. John Couch was a great conversation. A lot of good feedback on the Juan Mercado conversation. And I am confident we're going to get a lot of great feedback about Randall Grahm. Till next time, taste it, spill it, leave it all on the table. Because life's too short to not enjoy the pour.
It's The Pour with Adam Montiel. You can hear The Pour in its entirety on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. For more, visit adammontiel.com.